Say that again.
Or was he not?
My microphone was off. I apologize.
Well, no, I got to repull Casey.
I apologize.
Okay.
I'm not a court reporters here.
Well,
Yeah, but
the
they-
parties and anybody in the cheap seats out there. All right, let the record reflect, this is a Lima County, or Lima / Allen County adjudication matter. This is case number 21-0116. And it deals with the premises located at 3200 Harding Highway. Our board executive secretary's microphone unfortunately was off, so I just stated that, read that into the record, but we just duplicated that for purposes of having a good record and those that are attending remotely to be able to hear. Let's have an introduction, beginning with the appellant. State your full name, to the capacity by which you're here in a representative way. We'll do the same thing then with the building official. We'll have an oath administered and we'll begin.
Callie Lange, architect with Revival Design Studio, representing DOGR Properties in Lima.
Okay, and is anyone else attending with you today, Ms. Lange?
No, they are not.
Okay, and I understand we have Ms. Hardships on the line, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Amy Herbster with the Lima Allen County Building Department.
Okay, and we have Chief Roberts. Are you there, sir?
Yes, Chief Justin Roberts with Perry Township Fire Department.
Okay, fair enough. Ms. Lange and Ms. Hardships and the chief would stand wherever you're situated. Raise your right hand. We'll have our court reporter administer the oath.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
I do.
Okay, Ms. Lange, you have the floor.
Thank you. So what we are requesting for the appeal today, there were 3 items on the adjudication order. Item A was in regards to the floor plan and semi-permanent racking and the associated travel distance exceeding 250 feet. We have now revised the floor plan and the racking layout so that our travel distance falls below the 250 maximum. So item A goes away on this appeal. Item B is in regards to design occupant load versus calculated occupant load and how that affects the number of toilet fixtures required for the project. So if we are looking at Chapter 29, taking the full square footage of this warehouse addition and using the calculated occupant load, we would be looking at an occupant load of 740, which functionally is not in line with the intended use of the space. So if we subtract the square footage of the racking, that leaves us with a net area of just over 200,000 square feet, which is why we're proposing a design occupant load of 20 for this warehouse. The intended tenant for the space, which is Plastipack, has confirmed that they do not intend to have more than 20 staff members present within the warehouse at any given time.
So let me ask a question then regarding the reason why you want a smaller occupant load is so you don't have to have as many toilets. So the question for that for us is then what is the hardship? So what's the price of the project and what's the cost to add a couple more toilets in there to be in conformance?
So in terms of financial feasibility, that is not the issue. It comes down to footprint being used. So in talking with Amy,
but we need to find hardship, right? So in order for us to change the law, right, you're asking for a variance to the current law. We need to understand the reason for that other than you don't want to. So that's what I'm asking, the economic numbers, if that's not the issue, what is the hardship?
So the argument isn't hardship. The argument is with the layout of the racking physically, there would not be 700 people packed into this warehouse. And so as
How many toilets do you have planned versus how many are required?
Great question. So we have adjusted the floor plan after the original submission to show 2 toilet fixtures per sex instead of the initially proposed 1 toilet fixture per sex. So if we look at our calculations, I go back up here, one moment. If we look at our gross area, based on that, the occupant load would be 740. We divide that by 2. We're looking at a minimum of 4 fixtures per sex, and we're requesting 2. Based on a design occupant load of 20.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Ms. Lange at this point?
Yeah, it looks like you could easily add restrooms right along that wall where the restrooms are. It's a pretty big building. It's hard to believe you don't have enough footprint to add more water closets, lavatories. Another thing is if you have to travel 100 some feet, which is another variance proposal, I think you should have an extra. We'd prefer to have a couple extra lavatories or water closets for the person who has to travel that far.
And that is addressed with item number 3. The occupants in the space will primarily be using tow motors as their means of transportation. So moving pallets, product on racking, so on and so forth. So it would be a rare occurrence where someone is walking from one end of the building to the other. And so we're requesting that we can have these toilet rooms isolated in one location where the plumbing lines are existing along that side of the building, versus splitting them up north and south, which would be a fairly significant cost.
I don't have any other questions on
Well,
this item. So.
Yeah, but Fred, well, according to what you testified, cost is not the issue. So I guess I'm still wondering what is the hardship to add another water closet and lavatory for each sex or 2.
Yeah, Ms. Lange, I mean, that was sort of intimated in the questions of Mr. Big and is it just a practicality issue? I mean, we're just trying to understand here, is there a hardship either from a feasibility perspective or more likely an economic detriment or effect, or is it just that it doesn't seem, we don't need it, I guess is the question.
So I think that's twofold. So item number 3, the travel distance to the toilet rooms, that the owner is requesting because, again, all of our existing plumbing is on the planned south end of the building, where the proposed toilet rooms are shown now. You know, we would be looking at an additional 400 feet plus of sanitary piping, water service, so on and so forth, to get to the planned north side of the warehouse. They also, in terms of number, don't foresee any more than 20 people using the space at one time and feel that a total of 8 toilet fixtures would be excessive for their use. And so in their minds, they're looking at maintenance, shenanigans, to be perfectly honest, potential for shenanigans happening in the toilet rooms, that sort of thing. So it's more of a practicality piece.
So Two questions. The owner of the building, are they building this for a tenant?
Yes, they are.
So the tenant could change in the future, correct?
That is possible. Unlikely that it would happen anytime soon, but it's possible.
And second question is this addition sprinkler?
It is.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move to Ms. Harpster for a second. What is Allen County's position on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The cost, I think that if they were able to or had time, the cost of running the sewer and all that is quite substantial. They are adding a tower, a water tower, so they can sprinkler this building. So that there's additional costs at this location, not only to if they had various facilities, but it would be quite substantial. I didn't calculate the numbers, but if it's the pleasure of the board, maybe we may want to continue this so they can crunch the numbers. But based on the information that I have, I would be supportive of the two facilities, two plumbing fixtures in the male, two plumbing fixtures in the women's. Being in a warehouse and working in a warehouse, you don't have much pedestrian traffic. If you do, it's very limited. And I understand, and I'm understanding of the tenant could change. What they're adding on to has been there. I don't know what year it was, but it has been there quite a few years. The facility that they're adding on to, this structure will feed P&G with supplies, plastic bottles, and various plastic materials. So hopefully we don't see P&G going away for a long while, but that's the tenant that feeds P&G supplies. As far as the travel distance, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we've got some background noise.
As far as the travel distance, I with most of the folks being on some sort of tow motor or motorized vehicle, I can tell you, being an employee, I will be be close to the restroom by the time I need it. So, as a practical matter, I do always want to take care of the handicap. They do have one that's handicapped, so I'm sensitive to that. I'd like to see more details on how the handicap individuals be located close to that. So if they're unloading, if it's a trucker unloading, they're able to access that area where the restrooms are, that it would be accessible to the drivers.
Okay, questions of Ms. Harpster, members of the board, and if not, I'll ask the chief to weigh in.
Well, we do have one other item on here so we're talking about the plumbing fixtures now, so.
Okay.
Maybe we wrap up this part.
Yeah, let's do that.
The other one is
Yeah.
about the openings.
Okay. The first item can be dismissed, right?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Harpster. You want to address that second issue?
It's actually item C, I believe.
The item which has dropped off, that's the item that we're discussing right now. They have made modifications, so the travel distance is no longer needed.
Okay.
They have changed the racking set up to accommodate travel distance.
Okay. So all the items are related then to the toilet rooms.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, chief. Thoughts from the fire jurisdiction?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. None at this time. I just seen the invite last Friday, so I figured I'd attend just in case I had a chance to look it over and review it. And yeah, I have no opinion to give either way at this time.
Okay. Okay, any follow-up questions by board members of any of you participants? All right, if not, I entertain discussion points, thoughts, sentiments.
Yeah, I mean, looking at these restrooms, like the detail here, these look like they're one-person restrooms. You know, there's no partitions in there. And actually, the detail that they provide, I'm looking at, it looks like the woman's, looks just like the men's.
Well, I think Ms. Archer did request some additional details on the restroom, so I think that's probably forthcoming.
Okay. I mean, so we're gonna postpone this?
Well, I think the question is, you know, we have two questions. One, number of toilet rooms, do we want to give a variance on the number of? And two, that. Personally, here's what I think. Yes, maybe there's not a lot of people in that warehouse, but I can guarantee that every single, like they have a lot of docks. Those truckers are gonna want to use the bathrooms, right? It's hard to say what that number is, right? I don't see any hardship for adding the number of fixtures. I think I would be okay with giving a variance for item C on the travel distance. Code says 100% within 500 feet. Yeah, technically from corner to corner, it's probably more, but it's 400 feet across from front to back. So, in my opinion, I would say let's not give a variance for item B and give an item variance for item C. That's
I agree with you.
Good.
I would support that. I think that, I mean, there's potentially more truck drivers here than there are employees of the facility. If you count all the number of docks. And so I think you're undercounting the number of people that are going to be in there. So I can see a way to vary the travel distance, but not the number of fixtures.
Russ, any thoughts or any questions?
I agree with Paul. I could see variance on the distance, but not the.
Ms. Lange, you want to, the writing seems to be on the wall that the adjudication order would be upheld with respect to item B. You'd walk out of here today, your client would walk out of here today with a variance related to the travel distance, which is item C. But, you know, I suppose we could entertain a continuance. You could huddle with Ms. Hartster, perhaps a fire official, and get back on the docket, to have a whole case heard at the end, or, you can accept what is likely to be based on sort of our straw poll deliberation of a variance on item C, but not one with respect to item B, and then just go back to the drawing board with Ms. Hartster in the normal course of submission of plans. But I'm going to give you that opportunity to weigh in yourself here.
I think that's a great compromise, adding 2 additional, so for a total of 4 fixtures per sex within a single men's room 102 and a single women's room 103 at that location at one end of the building. I can sell the owners on that, no problem. I think that's a fair compromise.
Okay. Appreciate your professionalism in that regard. Just propose condition time, or can we simply?
I don't necessarily think
We could just get to a motion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I would entertain one.
Yes, Mr. Chair, for Board of Building Appeals, case number 21-0116. The appellant is DOGR Properties LLC for the premises located at 3200 Harding Highway in Lima, Ohio, 45804. The appellee is Amy Harpster, building official for the Lima Allen County Building Department, and adjudication order number 2021-003-728. I move to uphold item B of the adjudication order and grant a variance for item C of the adjudication order, noting that item A, request for variance has been withdrawn, and also noting the no objection of the building official.
Okay, before I entertain a second, Ms. Lange, the way that motion was stated indicates that item A has been withdrawn. Is that the case?
That is correct.
Okay, very good. I would entertain a second.
Second, Mr. Chair.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, the variance is granted with respect to item C, and adjudication orders upheld with respect to item B. Thank you very much. Anything else to come, Ms. Lange, before the board?
No, that's all. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Marks, or anything further to come before the board?
Thank you kindly, Chairman, and appreciate your time.
I'm assuming nothing on the chief, correct?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, we stand adjourned. All right, I got to ask Brad, what was that? Dog barking on your phone?
It's a ring signal.
So I've said this before. I was literally in judge's chambers in Cincinnati years ago. Or a sense that we got, a special prosecutor and a lawyer was indicted, and they confiscated his phone and he had privilege stuff. So they had to go through a in-camera inspection. And the defense lawyer's phone goes off to the champ who let the dogs. And it was true. Okay, do we have the Oregon parties present? No, that's continued. I'm sorry. So now we're going to go to our Amazon Web Services. Let the record reflect it is 101, and a case that was set third on our docket, moved to second on our docket at the 12:30 time slot, is a division of industrial compliance matter. It will be conducted remotely as case number 21-0124, and the division's order number is noted on the docket. Let's have an introduction, if we could, of the parties based on the attendance list that we have that is not always correct. It looks like there are a number of parties that may be participating on behalf of the applicant. And then it looks like we have, I think at least at this point in time, Jay Richards on behalf of the division. Well, let's have an introduction, please, of the parties, beginning with those that represent the appellant. And I'd ask that you spell your last name, state your full name, but spell your last name as in the capacity by which you're here. We'll do the same thing with the building, the division representative. We'll have an oath administered and we'll begin. Can you unmute those that are participating in this case, please?
Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Myself, Hitesh Kumar, mechanical engineer at Silent Air. First of all, thank you for taking the time to review the Igloo updated design and provide us the opportunity to appeal in the response to adjudication order number 2 for industrialized unit IU 0835-14905. The industrialized unit correction letter from the Ohio Board of...
We need to get an appearance. I need to get everybody's appearance, including the building standards official, but all of those that represent the appellant. I need you to state your full name, spell your last name, and then I have to have an oath administered so that everything you say is taken down as testimony. So let's begin first of all with an introduction of everybody that is going to participate. And I have a list here of 6 or 7 names. Maybe it's just going to be one representative, which is fine. But those of you that are here representing the applicant need to state your full name, spell your last name, and the capacity by which you're here. Are you muted again?
Yeah, I think everybody is muted at this point in time that we can see. So make sure you're unmuted before you speak. If you're participating by phone, it's what, star six?
Correct.
Star six to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I unmuted it. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. So myself, Hitesh Kumar, mechanical engineer and Silent Air. I am with my two team members, Shireen Heather and Tristan Pratt from Silent Air, representing the issue. Up to you, Shireen.
So Ms. Pratt, Mr. Hayter, and yourself, okay. Who's representing, the board of building standards?
Well, let's make sure we get those other two people then.
Well, he said was the only one that participated. Okay. Anybody else, in attendance that is likely to participate, that wants to do their appearance on behalf of the council?
No, sir.
Okay, fair enough. And Mr. Richards, are you representing the board of building standards today?
Yes, I am. My name's Jay Richards. I'm a building official for the Industrialized Unit Program. Last name Richards. And will be testifying on behalf of the IU program.
All right, fair enough. I think we're to a point where I'd ask each of you, wherever you're situated, to stand, raise your right hand. Sandy, I'd ask you then to administer an oath.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. The panelists, you have the floor at this point in time. Are you muted?
Okay. Myself, Hitesh Kumar, mechanical engineer and Silent Air. First of all, thank you for taking the time to review the Igloo updated design and provide us the opportunity to appeal in response to the Administrator Order number 2 for Industrialized Unit IU 0835-14905. The Industrialized Unit Correction Letter from the Ohio Board of Building Standards has been reviewed by Silent Air, and we would like to appeal for two items for approval of variance for the comment number 3 and 4 on the below considerations. Number 1 item is the thermal barrier. As per the comment number 3 and OBC section 2603.4, a thermal barrier is required to separate foam plastic insulation from interior space unless the design meets any of the exceptions under sections 2603.41 through 2603.4.1.14. The proposed igloo design comply with sheet metal panel requirement as per 2603.4.1.4 as the separation material. However, the 2603.4.1.4 also requires an NFPA automatic fire sprinkler per section 903.3.1, which is a water-based sprinkler system that design does not include. Section 903.3.1.1, item number 2, allows a room or a space in an otherwise fully sprinkler building to be exempted from automatic sprinklers, where approved by officials, building officials with input from fire officials. We have contacted building and fire officials in New Albany, Hilliard, and Dublin separately and have obtained approval from each of them. Or the alternate of automatic fire extinguisher system, OBC section 904.2 permits automatic fire extinguishing system installed as an alternative to the required automatic sprinkler system of section 903 approved by building official with input from fire official. The igloo unit design is a server rack storage unit and is equipped with sophisticated VESDA early smoke detection system and a clean agent suppression system, as water is not desirable in the space and will cause damage to the housed servers inside the igloo unit. Based on the above mentioned OBC section and approval from local building officials, we would like to request for approval of the variance that the thermal barrier over the foam insulation can be exempted from the igloo units. Next would be item number 2, which is point number 4 on the letter. It is, as per the comment number 4, the building thermal envelope compliance is required to be a part of COM check report. Current OBC requires compliance for energy provisions per 2012 IECC, but as per IECC 2015 editions building that comply with section C 402.1.2 shall be exempt from building thermal envelope provisions. The proposed igloo design is a 320 square feet housing data center, Group U building of Type 2B construction for climate zone 6A, where occupancy load is low. Its power requirement is greater than 7 watt per square feet and design heating capacity 3 kilowatts, and average wall and roof factor less than 0.120. With the understanding that the current OBC still references the IECC 2012, a unit design comply with all listed requirements in section C 402.1.2 in the newer version of IECC 2015 and 2018. So we would like to request for the approval of the variance that the igloo unit is exempted from having to meet the building thermal envelope requirement. Yeah, this is our response. Once again, thank you for your consideration on it. Thank you.
All right, any questions at this point in time by any of the board members of you? No.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Might be more of a comment, but maybe the appellant can respond. So I think your path to compliance for the not providing the thermal barrier for the foam insulation is flawed. You're using an exception to get to that path, which I don't think you can do. And I don't think that's the intent of the code, is to do that. The reason why that we want a thermal barrier between the foam insulation is because if it should catch fire, the gases from that insulation are toxic. So it's really for the protection of any people that would be in there, which I don't think is going to be a lot, but also the fire department. They have an expectation that if there was a fire event, they came there, that they could get to there and put it out without being exposed to poisonous gases released by that insulation. So the whole point of that thermal barrier is to keep that foam plastic used for insulation from igniting and causing a plastic fire. Is one of the worst kind of fires that we can have. That's the reason why we have it. That being said, let me read something from the code commentary where your path that you tried to show, and I don't think that your path was quite explained either to either the local building officials or the local fire officials. So if you read the code commentary for condition number 2, for the long list of conditions that you are saying that you meet all except for one, in the code commentary, it says, it is not the intent of condition 2 to emit sprinklers solely because of potential for water damage. A desire not to sprinkler a certain area, such as computer rooms or operating rooms, does not fall within the limitations of the exception unless there's something unique about the space that would result in water being incompatible. A computer room can adequately provide an automatic sprinkler system or an alternative gaseous suppression system agent, or a combination of these systems. The intent of condition 2 is to consider whether or not the contents would react adversely to the application of water, right? So it's not that condition 2 said, well, if you have computer equipment in there, that we don't want it to get damaged. The intent of that is to say, if there is materials in there that if you applied water to them, it would become hazardous. So I just wanted to make that known and kind of noted that exception is not meant to exempt computer rooms from it just because you don't want them to get wet. So I think even if we were to follow your logic of using the exception for the exception, this one does not necessarily apply because of that language in the code commentary. So that being said, I think, in my opinion, I would not be in favor of removing that thermal barrier from the plastic insulation. I don't, if you want to comment to that line of reasoning, you're free to do that.
Yes, sir. So we do have like a fire protection, not the water base, but the foam or and design for is also stamped by fire protection engineer. So it's a very sophisticated Vesta fire protection system with a clean agent and with all required approvals as per the fire protection.
Right, but you understand that an alternative sprinkler system does not make this exception applicable then. The specific code specifically states that unless it's done by an NFPA sprinkler system per these intents of the code, that these exceptions do not apply, right? So I do applaud using another suppression system. I think that is good. It's probably good for your equipment. However, that does not mean then that that exception applies. And the code is specific on that item.
So Mr. Kumar, I want to back up to the very beginning. What's the issue with installing the thermal barrier? Why can't it be done? Or why is this industrialized unit not designed that way?
So this is basically a second lot of igloo units that we have already deployed in the site itself. This unit itself was a second approval of the previous version. This version we have a fire spray or not a spray foam introduced as an improvement design for the unit. So this unit is we have already designed and constructed. So that is one of the reasons. And second thing, this is considered as an improvement of the approved version of the previous IU program.
How many fire jurisdictions signed off on this? That's three?
Three. Yeah, so we got the approval. We contacted all the 3 fire jurisdiction sites and we got the approvals from all the 3 with approval from fire officials and fire buildings.
Yeah, so here I will ask specifically, because I did read through all of the emails there. I did not see specifically that you were asking an approval from them to remove the thermal barrier from that, only that you were using a foam agent system instead of a full fire suppression system. So it seems to me, at least from the communication, from the approvals, and I won't say approvals, it's really just email communication, right? You don't have any official letter.
There's one from Monroe.
Right, there is one, but even that letter does not specifically state. The reason why we want your approval is because we're trying to apply for this exception that does not allow us to have thermal barriers. And I don't think that language was specific in your request from those local jurisdictions.
Well, I guess that's the question. What's the scope of the fire authority's approval is what you're right? I mean,
Correct.
Maybe they're comfortable in one sense, but aren't even aware of the other.
Correct.
You want to comment on that?
No, sir, I don't have any comment on this. And if we have to contact or if we have to contact the fire officials again for the proper language, yeah, I mean, that's what we can do at this point.
Yeah, but even then, at least from my point of view, right, I don't think this exception applies, right? That the exception requires that the local jurisdiction says it's okay, doesn't mean carte blanche, right? In fact, the code commentary says actually for computer rooms and where there's electrical gear, it doesn't apply. So personally, even if you got all of those people to sign off on it with the correct language, I don't think it's personally applicable. I mean, that's
all right, let's
just maybe
Can I ask a question too about the code commentary? I mean, he is providing a sheet metal covering over plastic. I mean, the code requires it. Is that not enough thermal barrier?
I think that's the question for the fire official. You have exposed plastic.
It's not
Insulation.
It's not exposed to everything.
Right. Is it being covered with sheet metal enough to stop it from burning or catching on fire?
No. I mean, my gut tells me no, but I mean, without conducting a test where the same type of metal, same thickness, basically replicating the conditions with inside this unit and exposure to flame, I can't say. But my instinct tells me that if you have metal up against foam insulation and that metal gets hot enough to cause the foam insulation to off gas, then those vapors are going to be produced.
Well, let's do this. We're sort of, Mr. Richards, let's hear from the Board of Building Standards on this.
Okay. So I think Mr. Kumar outlined quite a bit of the information that I was going to share or add to the process. I think Mr. Began pointed out the issue that we were having relative to essentially what we saw was that they were trying to change the prescriptive thermal barrier that was used in testing with a water-based sprinkler system to protect or separate foam plastics from the interior space by virtue of providing a metal barrier, which is only allowable with that water-based system, at least in the code as it's written. Their building didn't require the use of any type of automatic sprinkler system, and they have provided an alternative form of fire suppression. It is not water-based. So what we couldn't get our arms around or couldn't see that we could actually approve with the language as written is the use of an alternative based system to get a thermal barrier of metal to serve as that protection from the foam plastic from the interior space. We were not provided with any large scale tests to support it. And so we believe, in essence, can that non-required fire suppression system that's not water-based allow them to reduce from a 5/8 gypsum board fire or thermal barrier to the metal thermal barrier that would be permitted with a large-scale water system or a water-based sprinkler system.
So, I mean, so obviously we understand that you couldn't approve it based on the language as you read code. The question is, what is your comfort level with the metal barrier now that it's been put to us in our discretion?
Yeah. Based on the fact that they are providing a non-required fire sprinkler system and that the occupancy level is low, and they are providing an alternative thermal barrier, that there would be sufficient time to extinguish the fire before the thermal transfer got hot enough to off-gas the foam insulation. And it is a standalone separate structure. So you should be able to make that assessment before you have to open and enter that building.
So if we were to grant the relief that they seek, and that's a big if based on comments of my colleagues, there's not going to be a lot of heartache over the Board of Building Standards or the industrial unit section, correct?
Correct.
How big is this unit?
320 square feet. And a good amount of it is occupied by the server racks. Another point that I failed to mention is it has a primary way in and out, but they also have at the opposite end alternative means of egressing the building. It's not officially an egress, but it is equipped with panic hardware so they can open those doors and escape in opposite directions of the unit.
Okay, well, further questions of any of the board members of any of the parties? Party representatives? All right, I'll start with Brad. What are your thoughts?
I could support it. It's a small, I guess they call it an industrialized unit. They bring it, I think, in a truck and set it there, and it's provided by Silent Air. And if you look it up, they have different unit sizes, standalone unit. And as the building official said, it doesn't require a sprinkler system, so they've added this, it's a gas system, in lieu of water, this Novec 1230, which is a gas system. And if there was a fire, it's very small. There are only a couple of people in there. They've got panic hardware. Other than the firefighting might be an issue, I can't see that it's a big safety issue in this case.
Comments? Thoughts?
Is there, why is there not gypsum board put up inside of it or another layer of protection besides the sheet metal?
Probably what?
Yeah, so we have basically a spray foam. It's a 40 feet container which has an interstitial space between. So we are building walls inside those containers. So we think the ideal way to cover those interstitial gaps was to spray foam inside the unit so that there is no gaps and covering it with a sheet metal on top of it.
So there's no air gap between the
No.
sheet metal?
Yeah, that's the reason for the design improvement at this stage, and because we had some issues on site for some last thing for the air gap. So for this stage, we improved it with no leakages, no air gaps, and that's why we thought to spray foam it inside and fill it with foolproof no leakages system inside the walls, because it's a 40 feet steel container, and inside we have to build walls, and we have to, so for not to have any gaps, the ideal way and the perfect way to do it to spray foam inside the container walls.
What would it cost you to put drywall inside of them?
Sir, it will, since the gap is very less, and we have a ducting system inside it, it can cause condensation issues if you have gaps inside those containers. So, the condensation can go inside those containers and in the interstitial gaps if we left some gaps inside the wall of the container. So this kind of an improvement is done for a leak-proof system to avoid any gaps inside the container wall itself.
I guess I don't think you understand what I meant. They're going to spray the foam insulation, cover it with sheet metal, and then cover it with sheetrock. That's not an option?
No, sir. They done the spray foam on the wall of the container, and they cover it with the 18 gauge metal on top of it.
Right, what I get what he's asking is why can't you put drywall on top of that then?
Because there are some internal requirements with the internal clearances which we have to maintain for the internal clearances inside the container itself. So if we add more metals or more, it will decrease the clearances issues inside, because this thing is done to keeping the fact that we have to maintain internal clearances inside the container itself.
Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna break for just a second. One of our board members has a telephonic court hearing. He does not think it'll be very long, but I wouldn't want him to leave while we're still on record and have to catch up to speed when he comes back. So let's take a 5 or 10-minute break. Everybody can just hang for a little bit and we'll resume off the record. Okay, try to be unmuted if you can. We've taken this, really turned into about a 15-minute or so recess. Mr. Welch is still in his court telephonic hearing, so I think what we'll do is, he may be getting off here soon, but let's resume, because I think that there are a couple questions that one or more of the members had of the parties.
Yes, Mr. Richards. So one, understand a little bit about the approval of this industrialized unit. What does that mean? Does that mean it can get bigger or smaller, or how does that process go? If we were to grant a variance here, what are they just go and pop this anywhere without letting the local jurisdictions know, or how does that work? Just so that we have an understanding.
Okay, so with the industrialized unit program, and as it's structured today, this appeal is for units built under this IU approval number 0835-14905 for locations in New Albany, Dublin, and Hilliard at those 3 specific addresses.
So once they industrialized unit, they can't just go all over the stream of commerce?
So with an industrialized unit, yes, as an industrialized unit, it gets approved for installation anywhere in Ohio. That's true on a straight approval, but when we get to appeals and we get to variances granted, currently they are tied to these specific addresses.
So had they flown out of your office approved, there would be no handcuffs or constraints. But because it didn't fly out of your office with approval, it got dinged, and it comes to us, and the relief is accorded by us, the strings are attached to those 3 locations?
Yes.
Interesting.
That's good to know. That was, I think, weighing on us whether or not if we approve something now, it pops up everywhere, and not having the local jurisdictions be aware of what we did. So it gives me a little bit of a peace of mind.
On those 3 sites, hypothetically, if they came in, didn't have enough IT in those facilities, those little buildings that are there to igloos, they could bring in a bigger building on that facility since we have okayed this?
To do a larger facility, that potentially would require a re-review by the industrialized unit program. That is a change. That would be a substantive change, and we would go through the approval process again. What they could do is they could build this exact same unit, 320 square feet with 18 data racks with the foam plastic. Should the variances be granted with the foam plastic and the metal barrier, they could build multiple copies of that for installation at those 3 locations, which Humar may be able to add some additional information. I believe they have installed previous data centers there under a previous approval that got duplicated. So this may be like the 3rd iteration of data centers going at those locations.
Sir, I want to add to this. So we are looking approval of variance for these 3 sites, and these is only for 6 units.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So 2 units per site, and only 6 units we are looking approval for variance on this.
Okay, and then one last question. Again, is a certificate of occupancy issued for this, or a certificate of approval, or just so that we understand the terminology? I mean, it's not typical of their building departments, right? They issue a C of O. So what's the actual document that you release, just so that we reference that correct?
So we will issue an approval for an industrialized unit and should this variance be granted, we will attach that information to the approved construction documents for the units that are built. A copy of that should go to the local building official. The local building official will have some review and approval process relative to its placement in accordance with the approval, verifying that its use is as stated, and that the local building official will be issuing the certificate of occupancy relative to this unit once it's finally installed.
Okay, perfect. It's good to understand that process. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mr. Welch is back. We heard a portion of that. Maybe just to catch everyone up, where are you on this?
We didn't talk about the second item too much about the thermal envelope as far as meeting energy code compliance. I don't have any concern about that. It's not occupied. It's probably actually going to be more heat generated in there than, so I don't think it needs to be insulated for heat or anything like that. So I would be willing to, straight up variance on that particular item. I think for the other one, though I don't agree with the approach through the code, because I don't think the exception is applicable, let alone the exception to the exception. I think I would be all right with the variance conditioned upon the variance to the thermal barrier to the foam plastic, condition upon the installation of the alternate suppression system being installed. Other conditions would include, that suppression system be a required system, and also signage added to the outside of the industrialized unit to the satisfaction of the Board of Building Standards for it. But I'll put those up on the screen in a second.
Okay, fair enough. Brad?
I'm in support of, see which issues are,
Well, I mean, originally, it sounded like these are gonna be polished conditions, but it would be, that it would be, that, given that we're told that this would be site specific, there'd be a constraint on that if there was signage, and it would be on the C of the certificate of approval, if you will. Seems like that those would be the conditions that would clear the first item.
yeah, I agree with what the conditions Paul said for item 3. And item 4, same thing with the energy. I don't think that's an issue, so I think it's a variance for that without any condition.
Yeah, I'm good with it all.
And
Was there something, I'm sorry, was there something in there about a second exit put in these also? I thought I read that last night.
There's 2 exits.
2 exits in each unit.
So if I would look at it, I would say there is only one exit that is code compliant. However, there are 2 doors at the opposite end of the unit that are equipped with panic hardware so that they can always be opened from the inside, and they would allow an occupant to, in an emergency situation, leave that area. But they don't technically require comply as a second means of egress, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, but the person can get out that's inside.
Yes, it is. It's like 24 inches wide and 60 or 80 some inches tall.
Okay.
I might not be able to do that, but.
I'll live with it.
Okay. I don't think you need to abstain, you listen to nearly all of it. Anybody object to Mr. Welch deliberating, on this, proposed variance? Mr. Richards, any objection to the board member that was absent a few minutes, participating in the deliberations?
No objection.
And Mr. Kumar?
I'm good, sir.
Thank you.
So I put up on the screen, some proposed conditions. For item number 3, variance is conditioned on the following. Number 1, an alternative automatic fire detection and suppression system shall be installed comprised of a NOVEC 1230 clean agent detection and suppression system with early warning BESDA air sampling system. Number 2, the alternative automatic fire detection and suppression system shall meet all the requirements of the Ohio Fire Code and adopted NFPA standards. Number 3, signage stating that unprotected film plastics are present shall be installed on the exterior of the industrialized unit to the satisfaction of the Board of Building Standards. Number 4, the alternative automatic fire detection and suppression system shall be considered a required system and listed as such on the certificate of approval for the industrialized unit by the Board of Building Standards. The certificate of approval shall be forwarded to building officials and fire officials in any local jurisdiction where the industrialized unit is to be installed. And number 5, this variance is granted based on the use, construction, occupant load, building area, and level of activity identified on the approved construction documents, including the maintenance of all building systems and any conditions required herein.
Okay, Mr. Kumar, and or Mr. Richards, first of all, any questions with regard to those proposed conditions? Any need for clarification? And if not, what's your satisfaction level with those?
I don't see any objection from my perspective, and we can make sure that that stuff's included in the approved construction documents.
Okay, and from the appellant?
I don't see any objections, sir. I am good to.
Okay, I think we're to a time when I would entertain a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, for Board of Building Appeals, case number 21-0124, the appellant is Amazon Web Services for 3 different premises, 6685 Crosby Court, Dublin, Ohio, 43064, 5109 Hayden Run Road, Hilliard, Ohio, 43026, and 2550 Beach Road, New Albany, Ohio, 43054. The appellee is Jay Richard, building official for the Board of Building Standards, and adjudication order number 2, IU 083514905. I move to grant the variance subject to the conditions previously read into the record and noting the no objection of the chief of the industrialized unit section.
Fair enough, that motion's been made. Is there a second? Second. Second's been made. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, variance is granted, gentlemen, on those conditions. Best of luck. Anything to come further from the board on this case? Hearing none, we'll stand adjourned there. Let's move into, are we okay? Is it ready to break? Okay. Let's call a case at 1 o'clock on our docket. Apologize, it's now 2 o'clock, but we're making some progress here. It's case number 21-0117. This is a Stowe adjudication, and that jurisdiction's adjudication number is noted on the docket. Let's have an introduction of the parties. First of all, beginning with the appellant, state your full name, please. Spell your last name, the capacity by which you're here. We'll do the same thing then with the building officials.
I think can do it as a can be possible.
We should start doing a roll call. All right, off the record for a second.
Charles Corcoran's here, that's it. That I can see.
Mr. Corcoran, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, and who's with you today?
The city of Stowe was calling in. They stepped out to conserve batteries, so I am in the process of trying to get them back online.
And then our fire official, Mr. Hartman, is at least listed as possible. Is Mr. Novacek and or Mr. Merle present?
I do not see them, sir.
Okay, let's go off record if you want to try to get hold of them or somehow.
What can I announce?
Yeah, I mean, we could do an announcement really quickly. So we are seeing that we have 10 attendees, which means that we can monitor who is watching online. If you are merely watching online and are unable to participate, that means you have signed in incorrectly. You have not followed the procedures correctly going in through Microsoft Teams.
Our case is up. Please call in.
I'm going to Susan's microphone. So what we need you to do then is either try to sign in correctly through Microsoft Teams per the directions sent to you by Ms. Steer, or call in. Your email invitation also had a call-in number, and you can participate by phone. But if you're just watching on the web, we have no way to conduct your hearing.
Let's give it a couple seconds.
That was awesome.
If you're just watching on the web, we have no way to conduct your hearing.
There comes another one.
Hello, this is Mike Merle calling in.
Okay, Mr. Merle, thank you. Is Mr. Novacek participating as well?
No, Mr. Novacek will not be participating.
Okay, Mr. Corcoran, have you been contacted by Mr. Catalina?
They should be online. I see their phone number that's come up.
This is Mike Merle calling in.
Okay, Mr. Merle, thank you. Is Mr. Novacek?
So I will ask those of you who are watching online, please turn down your speakers on your computer because we're getting feedback.
Contacted by Mr. Catalina?
Okay, I turned it down.
Okay, is Jason Hartman online as well?
I'm present via telephone.
Okay, you're there by telephone. Okay, perfect. I think we have what we need to. All right, let's go back on the record if we could, Sandy. Let's officially call case number 21-0117. This is a Stowe matter. Stowe's adjudication noted on our docket. Let's have the introduction of the parties. Mr. Merle, would you introduce yourself, spell your last name for our purposes of our record, and state the capacity that you're here. We'll do the same thing with the building and fire officials.
Yeah, my name is Michael J. Merle, M-E-R-L-E, and I am the president of Ray Fogg Building Methods.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Catalano, are you present? Are you muted? Not present. Mr. Corcoran, are you still present?
Yes, I am, sir.
Okay.
Charles Corcoran, C-O-R-C-O-R-A-N, contract plan examiner, City of Stowe.
And our fire official?
Yes, it's Jason Hartman, H-A-R-T-M-A-N, Stowe Fire Department.
Okay, and Mr. Corcoran, are you prepared to go forward on behalf of the building department if Mr. Catalano is not present?
Yes, sir.
Fair enough. Okay, Mr. Merle, Mr. Hartman, Mr. Corcoran, if you'd stand, raise your right hand.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do. I do.
Okay. All right. Well, we've got through the complicated part now. Mr. Merle, you have the floor.
Thank you. We're asking for relief from the Ohio Fire Code section 3206.6.1.1 on the basis of the exception for existing buildings. I will note that this building is protected with the existing building is protected with an ESFR fire sprinkler system, which, as you well know, is designed to suppress and at times even extinguish a fire, and the system will provide a high level of safety both to firefighters and the building occupants. There are technical issues and financial hardships involved in the adjudication from the city of Stowe requesting that we add 3 additional fire department access doors to the west side of the building, which is also the truck dock building. The 3 proposed doors would be 4 foot above, hang on a minute, excuse me. The 3 proposed doors would be 4 foot above grade, which will require frost footings and galvanized steel stairs and landings at each door. The total cost of 3 doors and 3 sets of stairs will exceed $60,000, which is over 4.1% of the total project cost. And in our opinion, will provide little, if any, added benefit in terms of safety or assessing and combating a fire. The 3 additional doors will also become additional obstructions in the dock area and will cause the loss of 3 trailer staging spots, which will negatively impact our tenants' critical operations. I would point out that we have already added 4 fire department access doors on grade, which are considerably less expensive on the south and east elevations of the building. It is the 3 doors in the dock area that we are seeking relief from. I will also note that the 2021, although it's not relevant here, the 2021 ICC fire code increases the linear distance to 200 lineal feet between fire access doors and existing buildings. So.
Okay. Questions of Mr. Merle?
Not yet.
Okay, Mr. But how many doors do you have now on the north side? Or
We have 4 doors on the west side of the building on the dock elevation. And they range from between 137 feet and 197 feet apart. So those are existing man door exit doors, which will also function as fire department access doors.
Well, I'm looking at your exhibit 2, and it shows doors 1, 2, 3, 4 doors, and there's nothing over 137 feet. Is that not correct?
I don't think so, Todd.
Brad, it looks like they got their exhibits flipped. From exhibit 1 to exhibit 2.
Yeah.
I think it's flipped.
Starting from the south end of the building, the first door is about 90 feet in. Excuse me, it's 51 feet, and then we go 137 to the next man door, 171 to the third man door, and 197 feet to the fourth man door along that elevation.
Any follow-up to that, Brad? I can't find what you're talking about. I'm looking at every exhibit here. You know, I mean, there's one piece. Which one do you want? Is that exhibit 2? So, yeah, so he's talking. He's got pieces, 137, and 96. 78, 75.
That's.
That's what it's on. They're red. Which exhibit is that? It doesn't know that here.
I just can't see the damn numbers, that's exhibit 2.
This one.
So it's this side now. That's the
Okay, well,
side. Yeah.
it's reversed, but still, you got it too. There's your space right there.
Can I ask a question? Are there any fire department host connections on that side of the building?
Yeah.
Well, we will drop a host connection. Yeah, we will provide a host connection at each fire department access door.
Okay.
Have you submitted sprinkler plans yet?
Yes. Now keep in mind, the existing building is an existing ESFR system. The tenant improvement for Veritiv is a separate submittal that will include the existing ESFR system plus ordinary hazard system for the office area and the hose drops as required by code. Have they been approved, Tyler?
No, that's just currently being.
It's part of the adjudication and the appeal.
All right, was that Mr. Merle, Mr. Corcoran? Was that a conversation?
Yeah, it's Mr. Merle.
Okay, hearing no further questions at this moment of Mr. Merle, Mr. Corcoran?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to correct Mr. Merrill in his stance that this is an existing building. This building was submitted to us in 2 phases. One is a shell building and it is still under construction at this time. When it was submitted as a shell, we notified the applicant that additional doors and other things were going to be needed as part of this building. The second project that we received was an interior build out, which again, we notified them that additional doors based upon this build out were going to probably need to be required as part of this. The shell building in itself still has not received a full approval. And the interiors are very close to being approved also. Suppression drawings, modifications for the suppression drawings have been submitted to us, but not yet approved. So this building is not an existing building. It does not have a current certificate of occupancy, nor a certificate of completion at this time. It's under construction.
Yeah, and Mr. Corcoran, just so I understand that they were notified that additional doors were to be added for the shell building.
Yes.
Okay.
When the shell building came in, we did not have a layout for the tenant space, but they were notified that, you know, additional doors were going to be needed to comply with the high pile rack requirements.
Can someone verify for us exhibit number 2 and exhibit number 3? Brad is right as far as I can see also that is exhibit 2 what the building department was asking for, and they're 2 different drawings here.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jason Hartman from Stowe Fire Department. May I ask a question, sir?
Go ahead.
I submitted some exhibits, and I believe my number 2 should have a date on it, 8/3/21. It was a proposal. Is that what the question is being asked?
Yeah, proposed doors. Oh. That one does have 4 exits on the, I guess that's the south side. There's no, I have no way to verify that, but.
Yeah, so on my exhibit 2 of 8/3/21, this was a proposal that was emailed to the building department and Fire Prevention Bureau. We looked at it and sent it back to the developer FOG and said, you know, this would work. And then they resubmitted with those doors missing. So that was just a proposal, and then it never came through on an actual plan.
Well, that opens the door. Any questions for our fire official?
So where's the Stowe Fire Department at in all this?
So we have a very large building. From the time that we initially saw the first set of plans come through on the shell, we did notify the applicant that, you know, depending on what was given to us additionally and information-wise, we would need the doors every 100 feet as required by the code. And that is for us to, you know, quickly assess, control, and assess, contain, and control a fire. If you notice, on the one plan, we'll have storage up there as high as 34 feet, and then it slopes down all the way to 28 if you look at that rack storage plan.
So I'm going to ask the obvious question, Mr. Merle. Why wasn't the building designed with man doors every 100 feet?
Well, I can explain that. And we design we are what's known as a speculative industrial developer, which means that we build building shells and then we and build them to accommodate the highest common denominator of prospective tenants. Some are high pile tenants, some are not. And we make provision to add fire access doors in the event that we have a high pile tenant lease a space. Now, at Seasons East, which is right across the freeway, we have 4 buildings totaling approximately 600,000 square feet. And of those 4 buildings in that 600,000 square feet, only 22% of the space is occupied by high pile occupancies, high pile storage occupancies. And in that case, as each high pile tenant came in, we worked through the placement of fire access doors with the city of Stowe. Keep in mind that those were, Mr. Corcoran's correct in that this building is not completed. At that time, with those tenants, those buildings were complete. And the City of Stowe Fire Department worked with us on the placement of fire doors in strategic places that would be most beneficial to controlling and assessing and fighting the fire. So with that precedent in mind, we have moved forward in the same manner with this building, fully expecting that once we had a final design, we could discuss the placement of fire doors in areas that made the most sense. Mr. Corcoran is asserting that we don't have that benefit of that exception because this is not an existing building, and I suppose technically I'd have to say if it's not complete, it's not existing, and if that's the case, then I'd have to agree with him. But we also have to keep in mind that from a fire fighting perspective, I mean, this is a speed bay. It's a 60-foot wide bay, runs the length of the building, and it's open. There's no high pile storage in that area. And the difference in distance to the high pile storage from the proposed fire doors, the added fire doors from the existing fire doors, is a difference between about 65 feet and 120 feet. So, you know, there's about 55 feet or maybe 20 steps more to get to the pile if someone had to get to the pile, but certainly the ability to assess is not significantly better from a proposed fire door location than it is from any one of the 4 existing doors. So I think that, you know, there's a considerable financial hardship here. There's an operational hardship here from the tenant's perspective. And I'd like to please ask the Board of Building Appeals to give us some relief here.
Any follow-up questions, Mr. Burrow, on that?
So let me ask, your percentage, you had a 4.1 percentage, that for the tenant improvements build out budget or the tenant improvements and the building shell combined budget?
No, that's a tenant improvement budget. Tenant
Okay,
improvement budget is about,
what's the percentage for the shell and the TI?
oh, it's considerably less.
Okay, well, I'm only one
Here,
of,
go ahead.
I'm only one of the board members here, but, you know, I think we'll ask the question directly from Mr. Corcoran and our fire official. It's very difficult for us to override the local building and fire official. It just is, because at the end of the day, this goes into a file and you collect your rents, and the only people that really have to deal with this is the fire official, right? Whatever decisions we make today. So I don't want to put them at a disadvantage if they think that more doors are required. Seems to like you've already had some communications back and forth with them about the possibility of adding another door or so with spacing. It's going to be hard for me to override them in this particular case. Again, I'm just one of the board members, but just want to let you know where I'm thinking.
Is there a chance that this space is going to be leased out by multiple tenants?
Yes.
So hypothetically, Exhibit 3, you could, where that line goes and divides the building, you could have that space become one space to the north and the other space to the south?
That's correct.
Well, Mr. Welch asked Mr. Hartman where Stowe Fire, resides on this, and I'm not sure that I heard exactly the position of the fire authority jurisdiction.
Yeah, this is Jason Hartman. We have put that in our plan reviews from day one that we provided to the Stowe Building Department. It is of concern because it's not an existing building. It was a building that was brand new, so we made sure that we got out front of that right away. We feel that from a fire protection standpoint, for the safety of our firefighters to be able to quickly, assess what's going on with the rack plan that we have. That's a lot of height as far as the high piled storage goes. So we are in support of the Ohio Fire Code with doors being ingress doors being every 100 feet for firefighting access.
Okay, thank you. I guess that explains where Stowe Fire is on that, right? Okay, well, assuming no other questions right now anyways of either of the parties, let's sort of deliberate, express our views.
Well, they've already shown a exhibit here. I mean, their comment that they had to eliminate the truck dock, I don't follow that. So I think the issue comes down to the additional cost for the doors. And it's a small percentage of the whole project when you take into account the shell. So I would want to uphold the.
So I guess this is my question. Help me out, and anyone, Mr. Merle and or Mr. Corcoran. This is understood from Mr. Merle. This is a speculative, the business of sort of designing and building speculative industrial projects. What happens, Mr. Corcoran, if they get a tenant that requires a high pile storage? Do they still have to submit plans to the Stowe building?
Please clarify your statement.
That is occupying a portion of the premises.
The original shell drawings that were submitted to us. With a building of this height, you would absolutely expect some type of high pile to be installed in the building. As part of that review, we notified the applicant of what was needed and that, you know, additional information was going to be needed to determine compliance, whether it's the racking layouts, egress door layouts, all the way down through. And then when the tenant build out drawings came in, we were able to solidify those questions and statements to him and, you know, be able to present to him to say, hey, you know, we don't meet the requirements or you don't meet the requirements. And so additional doors would be required. They've provided them on the east and south side of the building, but not wanting to put them on the west side, which is the loading dock side of the building. If this building was one of the buildings like across the street or across the highway, you know, those buildings already have existing certificate of occupancies and have had tenants in them before, or are vacant space, which are, again, existing buildings at that point. But this building is under construction. And it is a multi-tenant building because there is a space to the north, which is kind of off that page, that an additional tenant could go in, or this tenant could expand into that space.
Well, Mr. Chair, my recommendation to Mr. Murrow would be he could either have us vote now, which in my opinion, at least one other board member would be to uphold the adjudication order, or maybe to request a continuance where he gets on the same page as the local fire department. And if they can come to an agreement, something similar to Exhibit 2, that maybe it doesn't meet the exact 100 feet, but has enough doors that it is sufficient to the local fire department, then we can see them back here again and grant the variance if it's needed, again, with the fire departments.
Mr. Chair, I would concur with that. If I had to vote now, I would vote to uphold the adjudication. I would suggest to the fire department that if the applicant does request a continuance and you guys sit back down at the drawing board, that if you find your way to some comfort level with the variance, I would suggest considering additional fire department connections within the building so that you're not traipsing around with hundreds of feet of hose. That would be something that I would be looking for as a consideration in a variance in the number of man doors on that side of the building.
All right, so two of the board members, Mr. Merle, have suggested a timeout to maybe do some homework and get back with Mr. Corcoran, Mr. Hartman on some of these concerns. That's certainly one option, but Mr. Welch and Mr. Began have indicated that if it's put to a vote today, they're inclined to uphold the adjudication as it's written by the Stowe Building Department. Let me, before I engender your comment, Russ or Brad, any thoughts on what Paul and Chip have?
I am with Paul and Chip. We were asked to make a change to an existing building, which it is not, that we have learned now. So I don't know how we give a variance on a building that's being constructed currently from my point of view.
Okay, well, Mr. Merle, there's 3 board members that are going to vote to uphold the adjudication unless the matter is continued. And I guess that sounds like putting a gun to your head. But, you
that's fine.
Go
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I said I'll request a continuance. I think that we're not going to flog this thing forever. we do have to get this building done and get a certificate of occupancy for our tenant by the end of the year. So what I would like to do.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we try to be a board of commerce. I know that that's debatable at times by people on the outside, but we'll get you on the docket as soon as we can get you on the docket. And, you know, a lot of that is how fast you and Mr. Corcoran can move. But we're happy to schedule our next board meeting other than tomorrow, is November 8th. So, and then how many do we have, Susan, before the end of the year? 2 more after that? Maybe 3?
3.
So, including November 8th?
Correct. Yeah.
So Mr. Merle, we have 4 dates left this year, where we're gonna have hearings, and we'll try to accommodate you if you're in a position to be accommodated.
Thank you. I think that going forward, I can read the code. I understand the code. I don't have any issues with Mr. Corcoran in this regard, but I would like to talk to Mr. Hartman to understand the fire protection mechanics and the advantage of having more doors rather than the doors that we're suggesting. And I think if I get a better understanding of that, I'll probably be more conducive to accept the opinion of the fire department. So
Understood.
thank you very much.
Okay.
I think if you carry around a 200-foot long hose on your back for a little bit, you'd probably understand.
Yeah. I would, in
Thank you.
comments with Mr. Merle and Mr. Corcoran and Mr. Hartman, I would entertain a motion to continue that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the Board of Building Appeals case number 21-0117, I move to continue.
Okay, motion's been made in that regard. Second. We have second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Merle, Mr. Corcoran, Mr. Hartman, that will be continued. Mr. Merle, feel free to reach out to Susan Steer, and we'll set you down as soon as we can set you to accommodate you.
Thank you.
And also, at your earliest convenience, please contact the Stowe Building Department. We'll arrange a time to meet either out on site or in the department.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you. We stand adjourned. This matter is continued. Any need for a break? No. Okay. Our newest pipe fitter member can go longer stretches of our friends. Yeah, Latin calls. Okay, we're going to call what will be the last active case today, and it may not be all that active, but it's active in the sense that we're going to call it and then hear from the parties. This was set for 1:30 on our docket. This is Maumee Fire matter, case number 21-0047. Let's have an introduction of the parties, beginning first with the appellant. State your full name, spell your last name, capacity by which you're here in a representative way. We'll do the same thing with the fire officials. And depending, we'll have an oath administered and we'll hear from the parties. We muted again. We'll have had 100% track record.
He's fine. He's on.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Or good afternoon, I should say.
Good afternoon, yes.
My name is Blake Wyman, W-E-I-M-A-N, and I'm here on behalf of Maumee Assembly and Stamping.
Okay, and is Ms. Krantz with you as well?
She's not going to be on the call today.
And I'll look on the participant list. I have Lenny Schramm. Is he going to be present?
Lenny Schramm is on the call. Lenny Schramm with the employer of Maumee Assembly and Stamping. Last name is Schramm, S-C-H-R-A-M-M.
Okay. Anybody else with you, sir?
No.
Okay, and representatives from the fire department, please. Well, Mr. Busick, are you present?
I'm sorry. This is Deputy Chief Jim Dussel. Last name D-U-S-S-E-A-U. Mr. Busick is not present.
Oh, he's not. Okay. And I have a question mark surrounding a Patrick Birch?
No, he is not present either.
Okay. Okay,
Does he want to wait for Mr. Busick to join?
well, that's, okay, Mr. Chief, are you, do you know whether, fire department's council is gonna be present?
They are not.
Okay, so there's no need to wait on that. Well, I have noted on the docket that there's been a request made, to continue this matter. Mr. Wyman, why don't you go ahead and, address that issue? First of all, I don't think there's a need necessarily to administer an OPA.
Sure. So this dates back to March earlier this year when the initial citation was issued by the Maumee Fire Department, and then this board held a hearing, of course, on May 25th, and we had 120 days to reach compliance. Since then, Maumee Assembly has simply just run into a few issues with a couple of the violations in trying to get different parts and line up contractors to be able to reach that deadline. So we're simply looking for an extension until next year to try to reach full compliance.
Okay, all right. And then, Chief, it looks like the fire department's in concurrence with that request.
That's correct. We are.
Okay. All right, I don't think I need to get that as testimonial. All right, well, it looks like at least the two parties are in agreement in that regard. That's not the end of it yet. We still would have to approve that. Let me hear from my colleagues. And any questions if you have, Mr. Wyman or the deputy chief, that's fine.
Fire department's good with it.
Any objection to continuing that?
I actually do. So here's the thing. We made an order, right? With penalties associated with it. It's not our job to collect those penalties. It's up to the local jurisdiction to collect those penalties. So if they want to enforce it or choose not to enforce it, that's their prerogative. I don't necessarily think that we need to change our order. Again, it's a local fire department and jurisdiction don't want to go after the fund. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't necessarily need to change our order.
Okay, but it's just extending the.
Yeah, it's extending the order. It's not extending the hearing. They want us to extend our order to give them more time to come into compliance.
Okay, I do see what Mr. Busick has signed off on the proposed agreed orders. So it looks like council has weighed in. All right, well, that's Mr. Beegan's comment at this point in time. Chip, what are your thoughts?
Before I answer, I have a question for Chief Dussault. The agreement here, the proposed agreement here is to extend it to June 1st of 2022. Is that too far out?
I don't think so. From what I'm being told, they're kind of at the mercy of this specialized contractor. The big hang up are the water tanks. They're stating initially that they couldn't even begin the work until spring. So I believe we're going to be okay with that. We're just looking for that to be formally documented as an extension of the original 120-day time frame.
Paul, would you be okay giving it a short kick and then letting that get papered up to the satisfaction of the fire department?
I don't, because again, the only reason why would be any reason to extend it is so that they don't incur the civil penalties, which is really up to the local jurisdiction to decide if they want to go after it or not. So they can decide to do it or not. Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, because what you're saying is they could withdraw their appeal and still work something out with fire, right?
Right. If they don't want to go after the civil penalties.
We're not the collector.
Right.
We're not the enforcer. Yeah, so I mean, I understand that.
And here, I will state this as well too, right? So I read through the emails that they submitted as documentation of, oh, it's gonna take forever. Our order was in, what, May? Right? So they sent us emails from the end of August and September. So did you talk to anybody the 3 months prior to that? Did you talk to more than one contractor? Because it looks like you talked to one person and you talked to it 3 or 4 months after the order, and then they're telling you that they can't get it. You know, so from a month ago, they said they can't get it. Well, you had some additional time to do that work and to look for other contractors. So I don't necessarily even buy the fact that they've done their homework. They just want more time.
Well, I mean, that's presupposing Mr. Wyman's not.
Exactly, right.
Perpetuates the testimony.
Right.
Did I ask you?
Kind of, but I didn't answer, so I will answer the question. I understand Paul's perspective, Mr. Beacon's perspective about, you know, ultimately the enforcement mechanisms are up to the municipality. You know, I think in this instance, I would agree with Paul. This does not need to come back to us in what, 8 months. I mean, this is something that Maumee fire department can deal with, and they can move forward from there. And I don't really see the advantage to kicking out our adjudication or our order any further. Because ultimately, if they go to a judge to try and enforce it, they're going to argue impossibility. And I think a judge is going to uphold that.
I mean, it's just like any judgment, right? You get a judgment, that doesn't mean that the judgment creditor, it's out of the court's hands at that point in time,
Right.
unless it's, but it can be brought back into the lap of the court, I suppose, on, you know, some sort of execution.
Right.
But we don't have execution authority.
No.
Right.
I think we've discussed this when we originally had this case before us. And a lot of times people say we're not interested in collecting the fees anyway, just giving it back. You're right, I mean, if this comes, they come back to us again and again. More excuses why it couldn't get done. It's up to the folks who have the ability to find that. Uphold it.
Well, and it's also up to the people that are there, both the appellant and the fire department, to, I mean, we don't know if there are other contractors available. That's not. Yeah.
You're gonna get an opportunity here, Mr. Wyman, in a second. What you want to kick it to the 8th and let this, and let both counsel give us the, the deputy chief's a little bit at a disadvantage because counsel's not here.
Right.
That may be the fairest thing to do, is to
Continue this until we can hear from the.
Mr. Wyman, you understand what we're talking about? It simply is that the way this process works under the statutes, fire departments have every ability to issue citations. And then I'm not even sure why the legislature did it the way the legislature did it, but they decided that this 5-member board had the authority to hear appeals from fire citations. But after that, whether we uphold a citation or we don't, well, if we uphold a citation, whether there's a monetary sanction or any other conditions that are associated with it, we're not like a normal common pleas judge where you can, one of the parties that feels adversely affected can bring a show cause to hold the other party in contempt or try to execute on this monetary sanctions. So what Mr. Began and Mr. Welch have said, just out of total practicality, is if Mommy Fire is in agreement through its council and its deputy chief to give you time, you don't really need our blessing. You see what I'm saying?
Sure, I do understand that. And our initial reading, when we first started looking at the possibility of extension here, was that we wouldn't necessarily have to go to the board, and we could wait to see if Mommy decided to enforce it at some point. My discussions, however, though, that I had with Mr. Busick, much of this was his idea, and he wanted that documented as well as it could be. I think from his perspective, he felt that if we weren't, if Mommy Assembly, if there wasn't something in place that was providing an actual extension, and in other words, we were not in compliance and past the deadline, he felt that he might have to move forward to enforce that. Now, I'm not sure if that's still his position or the law department.
If I'm reading between the lines here, the law director's office decided that in order that the fire department doesn't wake up and change its mind tomorrow, it probably would have something in writing, and why don't we do it? Be the ones that do that. I would suggest this to my colleagues, but let's not necessarily uphold this agreed entry, but move to continue this matter to November 8th. Within 2 weeks, Mr. Busick and Mr. Wyman can maybe get a better handle on this thing and either yank it from us, or we'll hear from them again, right? And there may be a compelling reason here why Mr. Busick is motivated and suggested this to you that we're not aware of. I don't want to prejudice any of the parties. Any objection to that? No. Okay, Mr. Wyman, any objection to that?
No, I don't at this time.
We're not going to deliberate on the agreed. We're not going to vote up or down on whether we're going to extend terms and conditions of our original order. We are going to move and presumably vote to continue this matter till November 8th, which other than tomorrow is the next time we meet. And you guys can pull the rug out from under us if you'd like after you and Mr. Busick get together, or we'll hear from you then as to why there is a compelling reason why we should go this route.
Okay, so just so I do understand, if we come to an agreement and decide to handle it between Mommy Assembly and the fire department, then you wouldn't want to have any further involvement at that point.
And,
right?
And don't view this discussion as us being lazy. We have a pretty good work ethic.
No, I understand. You're following the statutes as they're written. I understand.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to continue this matter until November 8th.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move to continue case number 21-0047.
Motion's been made to continue this to allow Mommy Council to get involved along with Mr. Wyman until November 8th. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Wyman, this will be set down. We'll hear from you and Mr. Busick one way or the other by the 8th. Well,
okay.
Fair enough. Thank you.
All right.
So once you guys followed up with citation and whatever, it's continual forever until. So there's no end date on it.
Right, so I guess what Russ is saying is, would he have to recuse himself from today extending an order that was granted by a board for which he was not a member of it? I think that's more of an administrative thing on our part.
I don't think so.
I don't think we have. If it was reconsideration.
But then this you guys voted on, it sounds like they came back to verify to keep it legitimate into next year. You know what I mean? But so that once you hand this violation out, it's up to their law department to enforce it, and you guys are out.
The law department was just saying, look, I don't want mine cheap or anybody, I can.
Or maybe they're getting a new
fire. Yeah, I mean, get it right and get the board and put it on there. Okay, we're not quite done yet. We had an Upper Arlington in-person matter case number 21-0015, that has been continued until November 29th. We have case number 21-0014, which was a Madison Fire Department matter that has been continued until also November 29th. And then we had a Highland Heights case 21-0099 that has been continued until November 8th.
And the Oregon one.
And I forgot about the Oregon one, which was case number 21-0018. That's been continued until October 26th. So that would complete our active docket of cases, and our agenda still indicates that we should consider approving minutes that I just signed for our hearing on October 13th, 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed saying nay. Okay, minutes will be approved for October 13th, and then today is the 25th. We have a motion to approve compensation for ourselves for our prep and our attendance here today.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And then is there a motion for any sort of hazing of the rookie?
He owes ice cream.
So moved.
So moved. Okay, all those in favor? Now that strike that from the record, if you will. Okay, subject to operating in sunshine here, well, let me ask you this, is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, subject to acting in sunshine here, announcing that the next hearing will be October 26th, which is tomorrow, beginning here at 8:30 a.m. Assuming you get to the Tussing light 10 minutes earlier than normal, we stand adjourned. Thanks. Sandy, we have you tomorrow? You're now our resident reporter.
Yeah.
Cool.